Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this faculty forum. I'm Brian O'Connell, Dean of Health Sciences, and it's my great pleasure to have a great panel with us today for this short forum over the next couple of hours on research impact. Those of you who've been around for a while in the faculty will know that we have organized research days and different events over the last couple of years. But given the restrictions with COVID, which at this point look, prescient, we decided to go with a short research forum held over a lunchtime by Zoom so that we could maximize the participation of everybody from the faculty and including at different sites. We hope that soon we'll be able to meet again together in person. But for now, I think it's great to be able to have an event like this. And I would particularly like to thank Lena Doherty, our faculty manager, who organized the event today and made contact with all of the distinguished panelists that you're going to hear from in a little while. Having got feedback from the schools, one of the issues that everybody is very enthusiastic about at the moment now is research impact and how to measure it, what it looks like, what we can do to develop that and enhance that, both in terms of communicating the success and the advances from our research, but also in terms of reaching out to the broader community, of attracting more funding, and of getting more interest in the research that we do. So that's the focus of the short forum that we have today. You know, of course, that we're dealing with Storm Barra today. So with the school closures and people maybe working in places they're not usually working from, please bear with us as we may have some bit of bumpiness in terms of people leaving and joining us. But I think we've got everything lined up okay. You're very welcome to participate in the questions and answers, and we will leave time after each of the three panelists for Q&A. If you do have any questions, please put them into the Q&A. If you use the chat box, we just might not be able to see them all, but if you can put your questions into the Q&A, we'll do our very best to get to as many of them as possible. Just then by way of introduction, we were in a position recently to ask around our faculty, the 4 schools in our faculty, about their research activities, what they were up to, what are the priorities in each school, what are their developing areas of interest, and their needs and barriers in terms of research. And all of the schools provided us with very good and comprehensive responses. And we met with the directors of research yesterday and we had a really good discussion on those. So before we start into the webinar with our panelists, I'd like to just share to you and reflect back some of the feedback that we got from the schools and the faculty and what's on their mind and their priorities in terms of research activity. So if you just bear with me, I'll share that with you now. And we went a little bit, I'll show you some of the priorities identified by each school and then some of the cross-cutting themes that emerged as well. So in the School of Research, of course, has just recently published their research strategy. And if you haven't seen it, it's a very impressive piece of work, and I think is really exemplary and shows a great deal of ambition and a great deal of thought and a great deal of exciting new and existing projects that the school is involved in. Clearly, the school is a big school, has a lot of strengths, and among these are immunology, aging, and urology. And I think not really emerging, but well-developed strengths as well coming in cancer with the Cancer Institute, in children's health, in public health and epidemiology, as well as the work in the clinical research facility, and then in biostatistics, bioinformatics, and digital health informatics in collaboration with the ADAPT SFI Center. The School of Nursing identified their main research strengths as child and family health, healthcare innovation and integration, healthy aging, intellectual disability, maternal health, mental health and recovery, with emerging strengths in cancer care, chronic illness, health and well-being for marginalized populations. School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Science has research strengths in cancer, natural products, nanomedicine and pharmaceutical technology, and really strong industry links supporting research, professional development and teaching, along with emerging strengths in sustainable and circular pharmacy, pharmaceutical biology, and population health. And lastly, the School of Dental Science has its long-standing research strengths in inequalities in oral health, oral cancer, regenerative dentistry and biomaterials, and microbiology and microbiomes, with emerging themes in sustainability in dentistry and dental education. So you can already see that really across the faculty, without even trying, there are many common research areas that I wouldn't say they exist in silos. There is quite a bit of contact and a bit of work between the schools, but certainly all schools are working on cancer and aging to some extent, and all are developing emerging themes in cancer with aging, children's health, population health, sustainability, and then some are looking at education and marginalized populations. So as I said, without even trying, there's really a potential there for, potentiating our research by collaborating maybe in different dimensions across schools that we haven't really thought of before, in things like precision medicine, cancer immunology, cancer survivorship, for example, and supportive cares. These are really cross-cutting themes that are emerging, organically, which I think is always probably the best way for things to happen. So what are the priorities then that were identified across the faculty and sort of even out with the faculty? One of the highest, probably the thing that has come top of the list, reflected back to us, was a need for clinical research infrastructure and personnel, better access to clinical trials, both physically and also the soft architecture that goes around that, preclinical core facilities, and help with end-to-end proposal development. Probably the formal development of an aging institute, which was identified as a priority by multiple schools. We have, of course, already MISA there pictured on the right, the Mercer's Institute, but developing that into perhaps or using that as part of a development into a fully fledged aging institute could really help to kind of centralize and catalyze, be a place where people can rally round to do all kinds of interesting research on aging. Biostatistics and bioinformatics was mentioned, time and again, including, of course, with clinical links, and all the supporting computational resources, creating a core for facility, for example, for the development of precision medicine. Impact reporting, the impact of our research, which is what we're going to talk about later, impact reporting, a framework for developing impact narratives. It came up again and again. And as I was saying to the panel beforehand, every school now wants to have a research impact officer because, they're seeing the benefits of that. Clearly, with the development of the CHI, Children's Health Ireland, on the St. James's campus, it's brought a new focus and a new awareness of children's health and the need and the opportunity for more research in children's health and all the partnerships and cross-cutting developments that could occur there. And then we have, on the real cutting edge, the opportunity to develop cell therapy research and manufacturing for those type of biologics, particularly for cancer, and the development of the Cancer Institute. And then, just as an example, it's not an exhaustive list, but reaching out to other schools and faculties, for example, with developing you know, the strand of health economics, for example, in collaboration with the business school, to again both make the case for, you know, the impact of research, and to increase its value as well by showing the health economic benefits of much of the research that we do. The sort of the elephant in the room then is, you know, how is some of these exciting things going to occur? They will occur through the schools naturally anyway, but you know, there is and has been talk about an academic health science center or network, or you know, series of collaborative centers. And you know, this is a potential route for growth, particularly for our faculty, and would, you know, if it were realized, allow greater possibility for shared resources, for example, and probably greatly facilitate multidisciplinary research. But you know, it's an idea that's being worked through at the moment, and certainly one I think is very interesting and exciting, and we should continue to look at it and see if it can be developed. I think finally, while we have the Dean of Research here, and we should highlight, you know, some of the specific things that investigators and directors of research in the faculty have identified as areas that would really help them in developing their research and making it even more successful. You know, not surprisingly, first would be talent, people, retaining and nurturing talent. So things like being able to recruit the right leaders, senior people, but also keeping the early career research pipeline coming in, encouraging people, giving them the opportunities, giving them the mentoring, giving them the space to grow within the faculty is probably the most important thing. But wrapped around that, you have to have the continuing opportunities for people, for example, for promotions. And we also have to pay attention to the many clinicians who are not actually, you know, employed by the faculty, but who contribute greatly to research in the faculty. And there are ways that we can recognize them and make sure that their talent is encouraged as well. It's a huge resource for us. Not surprisingly as well, you know, a certain amount of physical infrastructure is probably needed. There are pinch points in terms of getting new space for new initiatives, of being able to develop shared facilities and clinical research facilities. The whole area of research grant supports, which is, you know, has always been impressive in college, but, you know, every so often I think it needs to be looked at again, both from the pre-award through to, you know, through to helping people mobilize their awards, and into post-award support as well. A lot of PIs have said that they feel that, you know, there's a lot of help in terms of getting funding, and then once they get the funding, you know, they're very much often on their own, and they feel they could do with a lot more help in terms of, you know, implementing the legal aspects, getting ethical approval, making sure the data protection is sorted, and issuing contracts, hiring people, and so on. That sort of soft help that's really critical to helping out particularly the younger researchers. Improving and increasing our impact in communications, and again, that's what we're here to talk about today, but it was mentioned by every director of research and by many PIs as well. Also, the piece that wraps around that, the ability to produce dashboards easily, to calculate metrics, to be able to generate, you know, summaries of what we do. And I think there is broad feeling that the RSS in its current format is not really fit for purpose and needs a bit of a revamp as well. And then in a sort of a more local measure, I suppose, if in some sense we're going to try to, you know, recognize achievement and put resources where it will be best used, we need to have the right metrics in order to look at how people work and how they're succeeding. But again, they need to be updated, they need to be appropriate, they need to recognize, for example, PPI, they need to recognize collaborative work and so on, and not just, you know, some of the very narrow sort of way we looked at research metrics in the past. So, this is just a quick run through of what schools and directors have reflected back to us that kind of set the overall context. And hopefully in the coming months, we'll be able to work through some of those other themes and organize other events that will address, and help people maybe signpost the supports that are available and help to work with the university in developing those resources as well. So I'm going to leave it at that, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you now both the Dean of Research, Professor Wolfgang Schmidt, and our Associate Dean for Research, Professor Maria Brenner, who are just going to say a quick word and welcome you all. So thank you very much, Wolfgang and Maria, for coming along today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian, for the introduction. And to be honest, it's a real pleasure to be take part at this event. And thank you very much, Brian, for concisely summarizing the highlights, the opportunities, but also the issues associated with research. Very briefly, probably most people probably don't know me. I just say a few words to introduce myself as Dean of Research. So I'm Wolfgang Schmidt. So I'm a synthetic chemist, and my research area focuses on synthesis of materials for sustainable energy applications. And my research is funded by SFI and ERC. As I said, as a Dean of Research, I'm really looking forward to working with the faculty and with every member in the faculty. Our team, our research office, consists of 3 associate deans. So we divided up the work a little bit. Maria Brenner, that most of you know, probably she will say a few words after me. She focuses mainly on ethics, integrity, and impact. Then we have Brian Broderick, who looks at who comes from the STEM faculty, who looks at infrastructure, and Imo Vantius, who looks at early career development, focuses on early career development and open science, open scholarship. So as I said, the survey was very, very helpful. The presentation, Brian, was very, very, very helpful for us to look at priorities. And together with you, Brian, we will have a look how we can tackle these issues, and we can come also back to questions and answers, try and address these issues. Maria, do you want to say a few words?
Just really briefly, first of all, thank you, Brian, for the invitation to join today. It's wonderful to see the forum kicking off. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a professor in children's nursing, obviously in the School of Nursing and Midwifery. It is wonderful to have an associate dean from our faculty, but I suppose importantly, it's while I'm from faculty, I obviously have remit across a number of areas. So as Wolfgang was saying at the moment, key priorities at the moment are delving into issues on research integrity, because a lot of the informal processes around research integrity actually sit or come through the Office of the Dean of Research. So that is a little bit of a labyrinth that we need to unpick with the senior dean. So there's a considerable amount of work going in there. Also, a lot of you will be very familiar with the joy that is moving the current ethics process to an online system. And so that's progressing at a really good pace. And Gabriel McKee, my colleague in the school, is obviously leading that work, and we're work very closely with her in that one. The other area that of course is very faculty related is the enormous opportunities that exist and will be possible, I suppose, on the James's campus with the arrival of CHI Ireland and all of the joy that brings. So looking forward to listening to the issues today. I know we've already had a lot of engagement with Sarah on the impact piece, and in our office we're looking at, I suppose the next step for us is to look at the various pillars around research impact, how they will all thread across all of the various areas that Wolfgang talked about in terms of, I mean, from everything across the I suppose from students straight through, right to the end of our careers, our engagement with global, our engagement in the pre and post award space. So it is a wonderful central, I suppose, point and area for us to work on. So we're really looking forward to the discussion on that today, and looking forward to working with faculty on that. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you so much, both Maria and Wolfgang. No, that's really helpful, and just the fact that you're here, we really appreciate that. We're going to move straight on then with our first speaker, who's Sarah Bowman. Many of you will know Sarah, of course, already. Sarah's Director of Strategic Engagement and Impact Assessment here in Trinity. She has 20 years experience as a public engagement specialist, guiding teams in more than 1,200 communities in advancing collaborative project. And she has much work and many reports and accomplishments already to her credit. So Sarah today is going to talk about advancing research impact, lessons from Trinity's research impact pilot. So thank you very much, Maria. And I think you're going to be joined by your colleagues for some Q&A afterwards. I'll let you introduce Bridget and Giovanna.
Lovely. Can you hear me okay and see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, lovely. Great. I'm delighted to be here with you today, and I am joined by Dr. Giovanna Lima, who's our Research Impact Officer in Trinity Long Room Hub, and Bridget Gavin, who's the Research Impact Officer in the School of Medicine. So I thought what would be helpful would be to spend about 20-25 minutes talking about some of the initiatives of the pilot, and then have question and answer, because the Research Impact Officers really hold tremendous knowledge, and it would be great to have some time with them. So in 2020, then Dean of Research, Linda Doyle, wanted to begin a discussion that broadened our thinking around what research impact is. And I had been working with Professor Mary McCarran on the Ignite office, which was through the Faculty of Health Science in the School of Nursing and Midwifery. And as that project, the phase 1 was ending and phase 2 was beginning, I came into the Office of the Dean of Research to begin working on this pilot project. And that then led to the appointment of our 2 first research impact officers. So it's been a great learning experience. And I thought what we would do today is just very quickly, not spend too much time here, but just to remember that when we talk about research impact, it really is the consequences of the work we do. There's no definition for Trinity College around what research impact is. What we're asked to do is to make a difference in the world. And the beauty of that is that it really is up to each of us to state what it is we hope to achieve. And then to begin to identify those indicators by which we can measure that success. Strategic plan and across our research and strategy, we're being asked stable message. We're in the middle of a big band here, so I'm going to just turn off my video. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, there. Okay, grand. Just a point of recommendation, having lived through Hurricane Andrew, charge your devices while you can. If you're here today, plug them in while you still have power, just in case you don't. Okay, but back to the matter at hand. You know, we were asked to deliver really excellent research that makes a difference in the world. And I would point the faculty to the research charter, because it gives guidance on the things that you could be doing to broaden your local and global impact. It lists out the sort of supports and concepts that researchers have been talking about around what's needed in order to develop strategic partnerships, in order to identify and deliver local and global impact. The bullet points that are highlighted there that are in bold are the ones where I think we've made a bit of a dent in this research impact pilot, and I'll talk about. But really, I have it here just so that you can reflect back on it, given your list of emerging opportunities. But for us, the idea really was, if we were going to broaden our thinking around what research impact is, then we were going to take this 4-pronged approach, right? We know researchers are time poor. The last thing we want to do is to create like another ask on them that isn't beneficial to them. So we set out to build capacity for research impact by supporting strategic efforts. So where we knew there was a strategic, some policy document, some guiding document, some strategic initiative that required assistance in terms of its research impact, we would aim to deliver support there. We would then work with individual researchers to help them describe impact in ways that matter to them. So that was really around fundamentally getting a sense of the processes they're in and the kinds of information they needed to integrate research impact into complementary efforts. And I'm delighted Niamh is here today, her team, Kevin, Kylie, Edie Davies. I mean, they've just been phenomenal to work with, as has the Research Development Office and Human Resources, so many different folks that we've worked with on initiatives. And then ultimately, we really felt like if we considered our researchers as talent that should be nurtured, then what sort of good practices and resources could we share just to make it a little bit easier, to go back to what Wolfgang and Maria and Linda have spoken about, which is just to make it easier to do research and to lead excellent research. So I'm just going to talk about the first one, which is around building capacity for research impact. And Brian, you mentioned the outstanding work of the School of Medicine in terms of their research strategy. And that takes a lot of work, and Bridget Gavin, as Research Impact Officer, had a key role in helping to ensure that the data that was being used in support of this strategy was accurate and well, authentic in terms of the presentation of that information. They did a beautiful job in the development of this strategy. And this is something that you can do at any sort of collective level, which is to try to understand where your research strengths are and the strategic priorities you have. You've done this now, so these pieces are starting to emerge. But at the faculty level, but at the school level, there was an emphasis on these core thematic areas. And just to showcase what a research impact officer might do if you were to try to advance one of these, and I said to Brian, sometimes we need loads of caveats when it comes to putting any sort of data up, because people will say, well, I ran a search and I got 1,800 articles. What I want to say here, and this is a search that Bridget ran, and if we want to understand our strengths in child health research, there's a few search engines and tools that we can look to really try to figure those things out. And the reason we're using this example is to say that depending on, obviously, the subject area and the search criteria and the tool you're using, you're going to get a certain output. And it may be very different than if you used another tool. So Scopus, for instance, is good, fairly good in terms of health sciences. But if, for Giovanna and faculty with arts and humanities, it's not going to be the best tool potentially for them to use, just given how information is stored and tagged and the rest. So in this instance, Bridget created this search, and down the right-hand side, you can see the search criteria that she used in terms of subject area. And we can see that what emerged were 940 peer-reviewed articles, reviews, and conference papers within this period between 2010 and 2021. Now, this helps us in terms of sort of retrospective analysis. We can sort of talk through, okay, what have we been doing? But if we start to look at this data in terms of what might we be doing, right, we can see that medicine and nursing are leading some very substantial efforts in this space. So what are we doing right now to bring those two disciplines, those two schools together, and to really look at collaborative opportunities to advance child health research? And this may be something you're doing. But similarly, we know Horizon Europe, and we know many of the calls are requiring transdisciplinary, cross-sectoral collaborations. So getting a sense as you look across those other disciplines, who probably aren't actually very well represented given Scopus, speaks to other colleagues that you might be engaging. And this is the sort of data that's useful in terms of planning for impact, which is what I think you're really after. So if we were to kind of go a step further in this child health research space, because it's something that's of interest across many of the schools, and Professor Eleanor has been a good sport on this, Professor Eleanor Malloy, but if she asks the question around, well, how is our research informing policies and clinical guidelines? It's really challenging in child health because there's no sort of known, search that we can go after. We have to kind of keep thinking about the different terms that we could use. But here's another example of a search that Bridget ran. And again, this is around trying to understand the influence on child health on policy because of our child health research. Now, of those 940 articles and conference papers that came up in the original search, 888 of those had digital object identifiers that Bridget could pull into this tool that we're playing with at the moment called Overton. And within this tool, we could start to see that our researchers are substantially informing policies, and that they're in a diversity of sources, and that citation is global. It's not just held to Ireland, though it is strong in terms of Ireland and the UK. And we can start to delve into that data to get a sense of what are the key policy sources, what are the main journal subjects, who's citing us, how are we being cited? And again, we could use this data to that kind of boxing clever analogy to begin to actually create some of the strategic collaborations that we're after as we move into Horizon Europe and other funding calls. So it's this level of data when you have a research impact officer that can be looked at and pulled apart and utilized both to understand what you've been doing, but also to position yourself for opportunities. So again, if Bridget takes that data, those 888 digital object identifiers and pulls them into Altmetric, she's going to again start to see our mentions in social media, our mentions in other medias, policy and patent. It's different numbers here, right, than what Overton is showing us. And so what we end up doing then, the research impact officer works with the research team to say what's accurate here, because what we want to apply a rigor to understanding research impact. We want to fundamentally understand that we can stand over this data and that we're telling really impact, authentic stories that are aligning with this data. So if there's one key message that I want to kind of nail, today, it's this, it's that, anytime you're in this research impact space, it is purpose-driven and it is audience-specific. So the kind of information you would be pulling together for an industry partner is very different than the kind of information you'll be pulling together if you're looking for funding and you're going in through a grant cycle. And so, but there are key steps that are, that you can count on across those different activities. And the first, and Niamh will say this as well, and the research impact officers will say it, but that we have to get our house in order in terms of getting our researcher profiles cleaned up. We need to identify who we're talking about, how they're affiliated with us. We then need to audit those profiles, those digital records. We need to make sure that that record is authentic, that it's capturing the activities, the outputs, the core work you're doing. We then need to summarize that, and through whatever template is utilized, because it's specific to the audience and it's specific to the purpose of that communication. So once you have your house in order and your researcher profiles in place, you then can take, whatever approach you want in terms of understanding your impact. So just in the interest of time, we'll walk through an example of that. This was a project that Dr. Giovanna Lima, who's the research impact officer within Trinity Long Room Hub, led out on. And this was the development of a research impact case study. And so again, here's an idea of how are we going to capture our work and tie it to sustainable development goals, because that really mattered in terms of reporting. So this research impact case study is available, and I think Giovanna will put and Bridget are putting links in the chat, but you can download this and it gives you guidance on good practice in terms of creating a research impact case study. Well, in this year, IDS Tilda, which is one of the research projects within the Faculty of Health Sciences, was going after their next wave of funding. And so we took the template from the research impact case study that we'd created for Trinity, because HRB didn't have its own template. And we aligned it with the strategic objectives and key goals of the Health Research Board, because that's the funder we're going after. So this is the idea about it always being audience specific. Based on that, we created 3 case studies, and we took their language, evidence to action. That is what they want. Health Research Board wants to see that articulation, evidence to action. So the first story we celebrated was responding to COVID-19. And what we went through the strategy, and we could really see this emphasis on activating research infrastructure. Now, because of the phenomenal work this team has done, it's really easy to celebrate what they've been doing, but they've been really thoughtful about planning for impact. And what they really wanted here was to celebrate a key message, that we were having evidence-informed decisions by carers, service providers, policymakers. Because we did a good job of planning for impact and capturing the data across that project, we were then able to celebrate how IDS-Tilde data had informed the strategic responses by government, service providers, and carers across Ireland. And we were able to put in some metrics there around the modules that had been created, the training of healthcare professionals, the webinars to fill service gaps, the sort of engagement with policymakers in order to prioritize people with an intellectual disability for vaccination. In addition to all of those numbers, we had testimonials from key beneficiaries. That's the kind of story that's really compelling. The second then was, again, evidence to action, and this was around transforming healthcare delivery. So again, Mary and her team have been leading these collaborative efforts in order to promote access to and deliver, better health outcomes. And they've been really clear that what they're after are better health outcomes, better experiences of care, and staff development. So as they were leading this pilot, we worked with the team. They came up with a plan, an impact framework in terms of what they would be measuring over the course of the pilot to make the case, hopefully, for continued funding for this pilot, to be ongoing. And this has been a phenomenal success story. And again, because there was thought and care put into that, we were able to showcase the better patient outcomes, the better experiences of care, and the better examples of supporting staff in their professional development, all through testimonials, beneficiaries of these activities. And there's been tremendous outcomes associated with this in terms of next steps for the Center for the Memory Service. So the third one then was, again, and I'll just flip through this very quickly, which is just to say, this concept of an equitable health policy landscape fundamental to the Health Research Board. So we showcase historically how IDS-Tilde data was mapped into this policy landscape, the clarity within which data can be presented to policymakers so that it can be effectively used. And we celebrated then the outcomes associated with that. But at the end of the day, this was what success looked like for us, right? That the Health Research Board, the International Review Panel, came back after looking at this assessment of impact and notified the team that they felt IDS-Tilde was one of the most significant studies on aging of people with ID in the world. And they've granted funding, right? So hurrah. Mary herself has said that she wouldn't have known necessarily the reach or the impact, from her research, because she doesn't have the time. She's a researcher leading clinical efforts, leading, collaborative teams, growing. She needs support to kind of pull these things into place. And I'm sure that that's the message that's resonating for many of your researchers. So there's beautiful work that both Giovanna and Bridget have been leading on in terms of auditing researcher profiles. And this is in collaboration with Niamh and her team. And it's really around getting a sense of how we best showcase you and the work you're doing. And so this was just another example of deep diving. Giovanna pulled this for Professor McCarran. And this again is around taking a look at different search engines, working with her once her publication record is clean because of the great work Gavin Dan has been doing, working with her team. And then being able to celebrate. We don't know what information Mary might need, but if she wants to celebrate, moving into industry engagement, she might want to take a look at what's happening in this patent space. Or if she wants to focus on internationalization, she may be looking at the different countries who are using her work. So the point is, there's a real opportunity for us to continue to help researchers better tell their story. And in doing so, obviously plan for impact. Niamh, I'm not going to spend much time on this because I'm hopeful that you will, but one of the great benefits of the past year and a half has been working with teams to see how we might integrate research impact into our current systems. And so this was a soft pilot that we've rolled out through the research support system, in which you can tag your impact if you want to on your publications and outputs. And this is aligned with Campus Engage impact categories. And even though we didn't roll it out with any kind of hoopla, Giovanna pulled this morning, we can see that researchers are doing it themselves. They're starting to tag their works and their projects based on impact categories. So they want to be doing this. This data has not been mined at all. So there's an opportunity for us now to get a sense of who wants to be telling their impact stories and where do these people live and what are they doing. So overall, as a faculty, I would encourage you to sort of think broadly of research impact and to align it really with these sort of DORA compliant approaches. That, there will be people who say, I'm in a lab, I'm very focused on sort of head down lab-based research. There are still impacts that we can celebrate in terms of, a broadened research ecosystem, developing individuals, growing collaborations, the generation of new knowledge. It doesn't have to always be on the translational side of things that we have research impact. And if you really look at the DORA principles, it gives you an opportunity to say, this is what I want to celebrate, and it's authentic. It's not, limiting. I'd say just finally, over the last year, these are just kind of highlights where we've worked with researchers to help deliver some publications. The workshops, we've been working with the Research Development Office. They've been fantastic. We've been trying to focus in on engagement, involvement, the impact components, DORA compliance CVs, sort of the supplementary information that makes for a very successful proposal. And that number now has grown. It's probably double in terms of what's coming back to TCD already, just in terms of researchers. We've had a tiny little role in helping. So I do think we've made the case that these research impact officers are a tremendous asset to the university, and they are providing supports that are needed. I think obviously as it evolves, we'll get a sense of how do we make a dent in the rest of these opportunities that have been showcased and are before us. And really, back in 2018, there was a national consultation that was led through Campus Engage. It was in collaboration with our national contact points for Horizon Europe, all of our funders, researchers across all of the higher education institutions. And they came up with a set of recommendations for advancing impact activities. And this is focused obviously on engaged research. But I think there's some learnings here that are also relevant to the faculty. And I think Michael Foley is on the call today, and he would really speak to the fact that we do not have simplified payment and reimbursement schemes in place for public patient involvement or contributors. And that is really challenging, and it's discriminatory, and it's problematic on so many fronts. So there are things that we're not doing that we really could be doing. But there's loads of examples to pull from. So what I want to do is leave it there, because I think what will be most useful is for you to have some time to ask some questions of the research impact officers. I'm going to try to turn on my video in the hopes that I don't crash my system, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today to have the chat. Thank you so much for inviting me, and just look forward to celebrating all of your efforts.
It's really brilliant, Sarah. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I know it's just the tip of the iceberg of what you're involved with, and giving people a flavor of it. I'll just head into the questions, because we have some in, and as you say, that's the important part. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned Overton. Is there a college subscription to this, or can people access that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for asking it. So right now we're trialing it to get a sense of how it might supplement the tools that we have access to. We're making a good case that this is something that would be valuable to researchers, not just in Trinity, but all of the higher education institutions in Ireland. The problem with Overton is that the Irish policy landscape is quite weak in it. So what we've been able to say to Overton and to that team is, if we worked across, say, the Irish Universities Association, we could improve the Irish policy landscape very, very quickly. I'm just turning off my camera again because I've got an unstable signal. We could utilize that to become more visible to researchers outside of Ireland. And because it would be a benefit to the island of Ireland, this shouldn't be something necessarily that we need to pay for within Trinity. It's actually a very modest subscription fee, but what we wanted to do was due diligence. So working with Niamh and her team, Giovanna and Bridget have done a beautiful analysis. We're going back to Overton in the coming weeks just to talk to them about the questions we have because of the integration they're doing in different platforms. And then we'll have a conversation with Irish Universities Association and obviously the Office of the Dean of Research to get a sense of how this trial might be rolled out. But already we're getting phenomenal information back on our researchers. It's been really fun to play with. Giovanna, Bridget, anything to add to that?
If I may, yes, thanks. Currently in Altmetric, we also have some data for policy impact. So it's not as powerful, the tool is not as powerful as Overton, but we can find some data there for policy impact. And the second thing I would add is for specific outputs, you can get the policy citation through our subscription with Scopus. Scopus now is showing Overton data, but you need to go to the article level. You don't have an overview, and Bridget and Niamh can correct me here, but you don't have an overview of the policy citations from the whole body of work. But if you look for a specific book, or I'm used to books, sorry. If you look for a journal article on Scopus, you can find the policy citations, if there are any, through Scopus.
Yeah, and again, I would say Overton it's a beautiful tool. It has some advantages, it seems, to Altmetric. However, if you're short of cash, you can just get as much out of Altmetric. And I think no tool replaces the actual knowledge. So a tool is no good unless you know the data and you know your business and you know your activities. You can't. So it can only be used, I think, to start the conversation or to look and interrogate further, then see what's missing and what are the flaws with the tool. And I think once you know the flaws of the tool, you know your way around it. Like, for example, Tilda's team have, for each DOI, they track each DOI individually, and then you just need someone on the ground doing that. So that's what I'd say.
Great, thank you. And I know Niamh put information in the chat about how to access Altmetrics as well, if anybody wants to get to that. I just want to see if we can get through a couple more of these questions, because I know this is where time runs away with us. Another participant said, really good talk, thank you. Medicine and nursing are large schools. Any suggestions for schools that don't have either a research officer for guidance on grant proposals or a research impact officer, often very successful research who are interested in telling stories, impact stories, but have none of these supports being highlighted here? So whichever of you want to take that to start with.
Yeah,
smaller schools.
It is tough. I would just say that the purpose of this was a pilot, and the pilot was, can you hear me okay? Yeah.
We're losing
the
you.
Pilot
Yeah.
is to share our learnings. I'm gonna turn off my camera. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I suppose this is a pilot that's in place, and we're sharing our learnings. But I think in terms of the part of those learnings are, we each have a responsibility at individual level, at collective school level, at faculty level, and at institutional level, if we're really going to advance a culture of research impact. So I do think we need to strategically think about where those resources go. But I don't have any other wisdom to offer.
I could just come in. I absolutely agree, Sarah. It was a pilot, and I have to say the pilot is extremely positive at the moment. So the impact officers, I don't know, they have a wide variety of influences on grant proposals, on schools, on presentation of schools, on individual researchers, on promotions, for instance. So it is a very, very positive pilot. And what we at the moment taking or moving into the Dean of Research office, what we are thinking, how to formalize this approach, how to create a formal entity within the Dean of Research office that recognizes impact and also structure impact. Maria was also mentioning this a little bit, impact in terms of pillars, communication, individual grant preparations, presentation of schools, or career development. So what we are at the moment exploring is how can we structure it? How can we roll this out to college? How can we provide, for instance, the faculties with resources that are across the schools? And so we obviously need to look for resources here, but generally, I would say we are very impressed with the performance, and in a certain way, and it also means we need to think a little bit. And I saw this in the previous presentation. Whilst I would argue that the research development office, and Sarah and her team work very well with the research development office, it performs very, very well. On the other hand, the post-award issues, we might need to tackle this as well to find a formal structure, how we can address post-award, how we can support the researchers in this space. And it's a similar approach here, impact and post-award for researchers, which need to be, in my opinion, to be addressed in Trinity College.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks. I'm going to just squeeze in one last quick one if we can. And that is, thank you for a brilliant presentation, Sarah. Do you, Giovanna, or Bridget identify any interesting impact and knowledge exchange models operating in international HEIs that Trinity might emulate or learn from?
Yeah, I'm going to pass this on to Giovanna because I'm turning off my camera again. She has done some interesting benchmarking work for the hub, but what I would say is more and more, if we really need to look at research impact assessment frameworks. And I think there are some good models that we can look at because, there is a positivity bias at play here, right? We're seeking certain types of information. And we're potentially ignoring other types of information. So I do think we should look at, and there are some links to good research impact assessment frameworks. I'm happy to share that, Anne. But I'd also ask Giovanna to jump in, and then maybe Bridget share her learnings in terms of some of the benchmarking pieces you've been doing. It's not maybe a one-to-one, but it certainly is showcasing some good learnings.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for the question. Yes, so there are some great initiatives on establishing public knowledge exchange forums, giving grants to, doing grants with societal partners, but also just in our case, public humanities, but public engagement more, let's say, more one way than what we are more used to with webinars and stuff. But I suppose Trinity is doing a lot in this space already as well. So I think it's important to recognize, for instance, Unit 18 that is gaining space in this engagement, and then the civic engagement officer. So I suppose, as Sarah said in the beginning, research impact is already happening in Trinity for a long time. Niamh is leading the research informatics unit that can help the smaller schools, for instance, for a long time. The research development office is the place to go for pre-award, for instance. So, but yes, I suppose my point on benchmarking would be really it's about focusing on benchmarking with your peers, especially, and then with where you want to be. So the benchmarking needs to be very, like Sarah said in the beginning, very audience specific and very tailored to your own objectives. But there are some great initiatives around. We can chat more. Just email us. Thanks.
Bridget, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, very quickly. There's just millions and millions and millions of background, and that's the problem. It's trying to, but I'd be very results driven. So I'd go to the funders, and they're like, for example, HRB have very core metrics for post evaluation, which includes a lot of the impact indicators, including your international collaboration, policy, innovation. I have millions of spreadsheets, Anne, if you want them, I can send them on.
Right. Okay, listen, that's a great discussion. I want to thank you all very much once again, Giovanna, Bridget, and Sarah, for a really interesting and stimulating presentation. Like I said, maybe just the beginning of more talk on that. And it's a perfect segue into our next speaker, who is Niamh Brennan, much mentioned there already. Niamh, as many of you know, is the program manager of TCD Research Informatics. And along with her team, Niamh works on research reporting, evaluation, impact, research skills training, and open scholarship. She's responsible for the management of Trinity's current research information system and its integrated institutional repository, TARA. And Niamh is, of course, coordinator of Trinity's online doctoral students course, Research Integrity and Impact in an Open Scholarship Era, and so on. So Niamh, I think today you're going to talk to us about a little bit more about research impact and how we can measure it and what it looks like. So I'll give you the floor. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Brian. I'm just going to share my screen with you here. So just bear with me for a moment. And actually today I am not, for an absolute change, I'm not going to be talking to you about the research support system. I can hear you all sort of groan with disappointment to hear this. We can come back to that another time. We've had lots of sessions, you know, at individual schools talking about the research support system and hearing your requirements. I'm so glad Wolfgang is here to hear how important it is that we put investment. We've got one stalwart developer working in the research support system, doing all this amazing stuff with Sarah and the team, things that other institutions aren't able to do, like showing our societal impact, showing our mapping our work into the SDGs. Kevin Kiley deserves a medal for this, but he also deserves somebody to come and help him. So we need that, and then we'll be able to do a lot to the research support system interface to modernize it, to move it on to a different platform. Today I'm going to talk about something that's strategic as well, and that is about towards strategic professional research skills and training provision, supporting research impact in the Faculty of Health Sciences. So let's take a look with this. Brian, can I just ask you, first of all, how long have I got for this? Because I think it changed a little from the brief.
Yeah, you've got about 20 minutes, including questions, Niamh, so or there. So it's now 1 o'clock. Yeah, if that will help you. Just we have to get people, allow people to get back to their jobs.
Yeah.
So thanks.
I moved through, absolutely.
About half an hour, Niamh. Yeah, about half an hour.
Okay, I'll move through it quite quickly, and then hopefully we can have half an hour. Thanks, Lena. So we'll see how we get on with this. So the reason that I'm coming at this for very particular reasons. First of all, let's take a look at some of the things that are developing in this area. And there's Maria Gabriel, the European Commissioner in DG Innovation Research, Culture, Education and Youth. And she has said recently and throughout the whole of the last year that the enhanced framework careers within the European competence framework, analysing trends in the labour market, career skills and talent. And it's working on an observatory of research careers to monitor and recommend measures to facilitate circulation of researchers and employment patterns and conditions. They have committed in the European Commission to addressing issues affecting researchers, such as the recognition of the research profession and qualifications in national legislations and so on. And then doing this really deliberately, training and careers meets research evaluation, research assessment and impact. They're saying that we in the European Commission, we need to reform the assessment of researchers and research and incentivize more open collaboration, social engagement, knowledge and data sharing. So we've got that kind of impact coming in there, very strongly linked with the careers. Where are they going with this? Well, the European Commission has only in the last couple of weeks launched their discussion document towards reform of the research assessment system. And that's the scoping report. There's the document that Kostas Klinas, the European Commission's special envoy for open science, has put in towards a reform of the research assessment system. And this isn't pie in the sky. This is something that's going to land with us pretty soon. So we need to be aware of what we're measuring and what we're taking in. And there's another document, which is the Triangle Task Force. That's the joint ERAC standing group's task force on researchers training, incentives and evaluation, Right, so those three things in open science and open innovation. And what they say is that they want to promote a virtuous circle between training and evaluation, right? And that's what I really want us to focus in on today, to see how we can support those things that you want to do in your strategies that Brian has pointed out that are required across the board in this faculty. You can, as I say, you can look at this later on. This is the conceptual model. It's in development of the European Competence Framework for Researchers, which you can see in this nice little central diagram that they've got. We've got managing research tools, making an impact, working with others, self-management, cognitive abilities, and doing research. So they're building that into the competences framework. It's important to bear in mind that the development process is still in place. Everything is equally important. So the idea is that there are difficulties in accessing academic jobs. The demand exceeds the number of positions. There's all kinds of changes taking place in career progression. There's a whole lot of diversity in research careers, and a lot of researchers are following alternative career paths, many of which are as yet unknown. And we need to foster international and intersectoral interoperability of research careers. In some of this, you can also read, reporting on research impact, because it's the same situation. The European policies is the delivery of a toolbox of support for researchers' careers, developing a reference framework with learning outcomes, and looking at the recognition of the research profession at the European level. So they're updating the European Skills, Competences, Qualifications and Occupations, the ESCO classification. So this is something that I'm indebted to the IDEA Consult group who are working with the European Commission, and Anne Cohn for these slides. She says that the objectives are to identify a key set of competences that researchers need for a successful research career. And we're not just talking about early career researchers here, we're talking about all researchers, leaders in research, PIs, everyone. Describe the competencies through a shared conceptual model, and that everybody will be referred to, have a shared understanding of those competences, but inspire actions based on a shared understanding and be forward-looking. So just moving through that quickly, the European JRC have also said that the European Research Competence Framework will support self-evaluation by researchers, setting goals for themselves, identifying training opportunities, and facilitating job search, where individuals will be able to assess their own activities and resources against the competence framework. And don't forget, we're looking at impact there as well as a really important part. So researchers will be their own research impact, and also to show the value of their activities and resources by highlighting the ones that successfully address the competences. For policymakers, of course, and that includes at the institutional level, that means that they will be able to monitor and support researchers' competences to support them to do the best research that they can, to do research more easily and to do it well, and so on. So there's a vast range of organizations involved in, just for even one example, open science, open scholarship, information and training. This is just the beginning. There are funders, there's special interest groups, there's all kinds of government agencies and so on. Just a study that I did for the Skills for Open Science group that was reporting to the European Commission, we looked at all of these agencies are working on education and training, providing workshops, setting up recommendations and guidelines. This is a really confused environment for researchers to be, they're getting this information, let's say from the HRB, getting it from SFI, they're getting it institutionally and from different places. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. I just wanted to show you another example from outside, and this is from Imperial College. They've got and you'll see them in so many institutions around Europe and elsewhere, that there are standardized, recognized, authoritative research training frameworks that are implemented in these institutions. Doing many of the things that we do already, but actually putting them in a framework, putting them in a model, doing a lot of the things that our previous speakers talked about how they're supporting researchers to do it, but putting it into a model where researchers can be trained, where trainers can be trained, where policymakers within the institution can get the skills that they need, and it's all joined up. So that we leave Imperial and have a look at what's going on in Trinity. So within Trinity, here's this wonderful seminar series that was last year or this year, I should say, it's been a long year, the TCT School of Medicine had the Early Career Researcher Training for Impact. And we can see many of the people who are here took part in that under special seminar topics. And not only was Sarah and her team there, but Edie Davis, who's part of my team, was speaking at that as well. So this is an example of what we're already doing in Trinity to support our researchers, training them for impact and affording them the knowledge of not only how they can get this information themselves, but where they can go to get support and help for it. And what are these tools that we've heard about, which are changing all the time, of course. I don't want you to look down through that. I just want to give you an idea of the schedule of researcher skills training that my unit provides us every year, starting with new academic staff induction, going through master classes programs on communicating your research for early career researchers, doing things like this, running joint workshops with schools and so on. And that's even before we start talking about our postgraduate training. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. That's just my unit. You can see that that the Research Impact Office is also got this, and also HR, our colleagues in the Research Office and Research Development Office are also doing this. Here's an example from Human Resources that some of you may be familiar with. It's the Professional Skills for Research Leaders. That's where we kind of duplicate some of the stuff we're doing already internally by paying Equigeum on yet a different course, not the Research Integrity one this time. It's the Professional Skills for Research Leaders course. So we do workshops, and I know that colleagues in the Research Office also do workshops with us on communicating your research, live workshops to complement this kind of blended learning program that's provided by HR. And also with HR, we're working with them, and so is the Research Office and IT services and various others, to provide a set of a program under research skills. Ours from Research Informatics looks like this, and this is coming up in the next year. Research metrics and evaluation, promoting your work, open access publishing, fair data management, publishing and disseminating your work and your research impact from the overall point of view, bringing together all of these different trends, open to anyone on Zoom, but when our researchers do this, they can sign up for them, but they don't receive any particular recognition for this in any formal way. And that's something that I'd like us to consider. The research integrity and ethics in an open scholarship era is something that I really must mention. We were lucky to receive funding from the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning to develop an awful lot of these courses and to bring them into a very nicely produced multimedia environment that was built by Trinity Online Services. You'll see these sessions here: research ethics and integrity, copyright, intellectual property and data protection, research data management and the construction and application of research data management plans and fair data, research communication, dissemination and publishing, and research evaluation and impact in an open scholarship era. Now we're making that course available. It's a compulsory 5 ECTS course, and many of you will be familiar with it. That's been revamped this year, and we're going through its first iteration as the new course. But that course is compulsory for all incoming students. Many other research postgraduate students are undertaking it at the moment as well. And it's a collaborative effort with a number of different areas in college coming together to produce this. We're getting increased demand for staff to access this resource, or a version of it. It's something that we could develop based on this. So those are the sessions that I mentioned. Here are some of the people who've been involved with this. And of course my team, Edie Davis and Monica Sanchidrian, were really instrumental in doing so much of the editing and proofreading on this. Professor Irene Walsh, CSLS, narrates and delivers the research integrity and ethics section. That is based entirely on Trinity's Good Research Practice Guide, the latest version of that. And then we have Evelyn Fox from the DPO on the data protection side of it. That's where our GDPR training is coming in. Jeff Bradley, who you know from research data management, and I do a bit of the fair data principles. And I'm coming in on the research communication, dissemination, publishing, research evaluation, and impact side of things. So just to give you a couple of screenshots from this, I don't think, because I want to leave some time for checking my time here. We leave some time for a discussion on this, because I do have a question for you at the end of this. So session for your consideration. Just a screenshot from the research integrity and ethics part of it. You can see that the special focus areas include health, working with human subjects, pharmaceuticals, with animals, GM products, and stem cells. This course has been designed to be adaptive and to be transferable and scalable to different groups and different audiences, and also to be relatively easily updated as well. In fact, we're making it available as an open educational resource. It will be available to all institutions worldwide through the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. So, and here's another quick slide from the data protection side that Evelyn Fox provides, and that's about, you can see over on the transcript side, are you conducting health research? Right embedded in the middle of all of that around the general GDPR and data protection work is a specific focus on health sciences, on the health research regulations, and what needs to be done in those areas. So, as I say, that's just a quick inside look at that. So we've been asked, as you said, Brian, earlier on, and here's the list that you gave us earlier on, this brilliant list and amazing work that's been done collecting that snapshot of where we are at the moment. And I'm asking, which of these can a strategically designed professional research skills program support? And we can add in a whole lot of other supports as well under that general heading. And I would suggest that under the recruit, nurture, and retain talent, that if we can develop a professional framework for our researchers in collaboration with one another and with our other departments, that we will be going a long way to supporting our leaders, early career researchers, promotions, clinicians, and so on. Wherever our researchers go, whether they stay with us or whether they depart for other careers outside. Under the research grant support, what people are looking for is training and support on the legal side, on ethics, GDPR, etc. And certainly that can be provided and is being provided, but in a rather unstructured way for our academic and research staff at the moment, I would suggest. I hope you're going to tell me something different. Improving and increasing our impact in communications, I'm just going to tick that, that's obvious. Data management reporting, yes, we've got that in there as well. Faculty research metrics, this is where we learn to take control of our own destinies, starting with looking at our own metrics and supporting our researchers to be able to excel in these areas. So a possible model that I was going to suggest here, and that some of you may be familiar with, is over on the teaching and learning side. I hate to say that, it sounds as if we're kind of, on some, there's some big gulf between us. We know that there isn't. We're all teaching as well as, researchers, we're wearing different hats. But in CAPSUL, there's a special purpose certificate in academic practice that some of you may be familiar with, and it allows over a period of a couple of years our staff to engage with the Level 9 award that's recognized. It carries a credit of 15 ECTSs, but it's actually recognized. In fact, you could even take it into a diploma in education if you want to do something like that. I'm suggesting that perhaps we might like to consider bringing together all of the training that we're doing at the school level, at the faculty level, those webinars and so on, and to try and create a model for them that will allow our researchers to get recognition within Trinity and outside of it. So my question for you is, would a standardized, authoritative, accredited professional research skills training program be useful for the Faculty of Health Sciences? Are you happy with the way things are at the moment? And if it is, what should be included in such a program? How can staff receive recognition for having completed the program? And how can research skills training be designed to support these benefited Faculty of Health Sciences research metrics, ensuring understanding and competences in these metrics at all levels? Can we work together to develop this concept? Those are my questions for you today, and I'd be glad to engage in a discussion on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niamh. That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, exactly. I think leads on really well. And I suppose, yeah, even as you were saying it, I constantly, you're surprised at the amount of resources that are there around, but they're all in different places, aren't they? It's hard to sometimes know exactly for an early career researcher in particular, it's hard to know exactly where to access all the different training and all the different pieces of information, because they are spread around. So I guess, you know, the idea of maybe bringing it all together in under one umbrella is certainly very, very appealing. How well, you asked some questions there. I don't know if any of the panelists or you know, Maria or Wolfgang want to weigh in on that, or anybody else for that matter, how we can move this forward, or at least, you know, broaden that discussion out.
Brian, I suppose, I'm
Yep.
unmuted. I am. That's all right. I suppose one of the things that we've been grappling with, and we're obviously only in our office a short while, but is that connection between, I suppose, the academic side of the research piece and the enormous administration side of it. And so, Niamh, I think your questions in terms of how we merge those, and how we actually ensure an academic oversight on what is an enormous administration endeavor, I think is something that we certainly are increasingly mindful of and have a body of work to do. So I think it's great that you raised that, and it's something at the fore of our consciousness, because having two various areas, it can be confusing for us, and we're just in post, but certainly pre and post award and all of that, it can be quite a messy adventure to look at the moment. So we certainly have a body of work to do to even for our office and other offices to articulate together, and to know what we're doing, and then to be able to present that as because I think sometimes when you look at different platforms online, you think that behind it all there's lots of articulation, but actually what you find is that there's a lot of work that can be done to make that a lot better. Yeah, so I'm delighted that was raised. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Wolfgang?
I can probably just roll in at this point. I absolutely agree with Maria. So our challenge is a little bit also, like you said, Brian, we have many resources distributed over different areas in college to somehow bundle these information, bring people together who actually work on very similar areas. And then, for instance, structure this, for instance, by assigning, for instance, one of the associate deans to the early career development, IMO volunteers, for instance, to create a platform where we bundle these activities. But I would also reiterate what Maria is saying. In many of our activities, it is, in my opinion, important that we have an academic input, that many of our, for instance, also research skills program, there need to be a strong academic input for these activities to be successful. And probably one of the challenges will be to bring people together here and bundle people, and so that we can work together. But I would, in many of our activities that we do, and it is not just in research skills programs, but also in integrity, and to have academic oversight and have academic input into our activity, which we as a team within the Dean of Research Office think it's really important in many of our activities. So to have buy-in from the academics and use their expertise in many of these activities. Yep,
exactly. No, I think that's a good point, and that comes back to the capsule, that the specific purpose certificate. You know, it has buy-in, and it's you know, that's what makes it successful. Sorry, Niamh, did you want to get back in on that? Yes.
I wanted to make a comment on that. Thanks a million, Maria, and Wolfgang. I think that this is a reason I'm presenting this to the Faculty of Health Sciences is, and I have to say this, don't tell anybody else, but the Faculty of Health Sciences is more advanced in many ways than some data. Their metrics are really good, and some of it is because they have such incredible scope for impact. Not saying that other disciplines can't do that, but everybody understands about health sciences, health and in society, and metrics, and it's seen as important. But also the metrics that were selected over a really onerous process, I think, over a number of years for the faculty research metrics for the Faculty of Health Sciences are incredibly innovative. They may not have been implemented in the most fully fledged way yet, but they really have gone further than any of our partners in LERU, for example, where they have been taken and shown by previous deans of research and by Dean of Graduate Studies, that we've had people look at including Stephen Curry, the director of DORA, who said, wow, when he saw the faculty research metrics for health sciences. And that is where you're looking at beyond the metrics, the bibliometrics, but also including those, of course, and the inputs and the outputs, but looking at the societal impact, in taking in review activity, taking in supervisory activity, and looking at national leadership positions and taking in PPI and giving credit for that. So that's where the evaluation that's come directly from the faculty. So we're just, the likes of me and my office, don't think that we're administrative areas who are cooking up these things by ourselves. We're not. And the faculty research metrics in health sciences came from the faculty, as many of you would know, much discussed over years. And it's up to us to implement it and make sure that people understand them. And that's where the gap is now, is the knowledge gap. And the other thing is that within this area, there's an opportunity for this academic health services network that Brian mentioned, this kind of a joint network where you could imagine that you can have shared services where people can come together. Within our CA 7000 course, of course, the research ethics and integrity had complete academic supervision and the vice
Niamh, your sound is kind of going in a little bit out, in and out there on us, Niamh, unfortunately. We missed.
That was proofread by a team of that is, sorry, there's opportunities at the moment for funding from the European Commission precisely in this area of training for supporting these metrics. And if anybody's interested in discussing it, please let me know.
Yeah. And I think, as you say, the important thing, and we are trying in the faculty, that those metrics aren't just stand alone. They are meaningful when it comes to, say, promotion. So we're using the same thing. So we're not operating, as sometimes happens, in two completely different parallel tracks. So the same things that we want to see happening at a faculty level that, you know, get reported on up are what count in terms of promotion or appointment and that as well. So, you know, I think that's the piece. I've just two very quick questions for you, Niamh. One is fairly specific. SFI mandates the Epigeum research integrity training for researchers. Do PhD students who are in receipt of SFI training have to complete this as well, and also the Trinity training? Do you know if that's the case?
Yes, they do. So they're quite different courses, but they complement one another. So the Epigeum course was always created with the idea that it would be supplemented and complemented by the local information. So for SFI funded postgraduates, we recommend that they do both.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And the other question is, will there be further training courses for early career researchers in the new year? Or was one of the one you said, has that happened yet? You said, is that upcoming?
It's upcoming. Yeah, so it's upcoming. So hopefully, if anybody's interested, to contact us about that, or you can contact the staff development office in HR. They will be putting that up. Keep an eye on those pages and on the posts that come in to you from Louise Power and from the other team in HR as well, because they're helping us hugely in facilitating these courses.
Brilliant. Okay, super good. Sarah, I'm not sure. Did you want to add into this piece as we wrap it up? Yeah. Sorry.
Just that we, through the SFI Centre, so if you're affiliated with an SFI Centre, we are delivering workshops that help you fulfill your EPE requirement in addition to learning about research impact. So if you are in an SFI Centre, reach out to your EPE manager, because your data is due by the end of the year. So we're trying to kind of hit multiple birds with that same stone.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's super good. Niamh, thanks again. That's really good. And again, I know it's also for you the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more going on in your unit that you're working on. But I think we'll probably be circling back to you at future sessions as well. But thank you so much for that. Our third and final presentation today is being led by Dr. Fiona Smith from the Research Development Office in TRI, who's going to speak about the New Horizon Europe program and the supports available in Trinity, along with some of her team. So Fiona, you're very welcome, and I'll let you get on with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Can I just start by saying I'm not very confident with my Wi-Fi connection today. So if I start to break up, would someone give me a hand signal and I'll turn off the camera, as Sarah was doing.
Will do, yeah.
Thank you. So as Brian mentioned, we were asked by Brian and by Lena to come along today to talk particularly about the Horizon Europe funding programme as a potential funding source for research in the faculty, and to let you know about the new supports that have been introduced to coincide with the start of the programme in the Research Office to assist researchers who might be interested in making an application, particularly to the collaborative funding programmes in Horizon Europe. So for anyone who doesn't know, Horizon Europe is the successor programme to Horizon 2020, which are, they've been the flagship research and innovation programmes rolled out by the European Commission. They've run in 7-year cycles. So we just started the new one in spring of this year. And over the course of the next 7 years, this programme will fund about 95 billion euro worth of research and innovation activity in Europe. So why should you consider Horizon Europe, and is it a fit for your research idea? The main feature of the Horizon Europe programme, maybe in contrast to some other programmes, is that it is what we call a comprehensive research programme, which means it funds all research disciplines, it funds all career stages, and it funds both the bottom-up researcher-driven research ideas in addition to top-down challenge-driven ideas, which require you to come together with a consortium, which may be outside of your discipline, maybe even outside of your sector, to describe and design a project which will answer the specific impacts required. So again, the other main feature of Horizon Europe is that it has a huge budget. And because it has a huge budget, it funds projects of real scale and real ambition. And some of the instruments, as I mentioned, they fund multi-partner, multi-site, multi-sector collaboration. So the impacts that can be achieved by, for example, a 6 or a 10 million euro project with an excellent consortium spread across Europe, across many sectors, obviously really significant and really attractive to many researchers. However, the programme as a whole has had a bit of a reputation for being maybe off-putting in its complexity, seeming hard to access. So because of the wide range of instruments that it has, because of the different types of funding mechanisms that it uses, because of the low success rates sometimes, particularly for early career researchers, it has seemed inaccessible or difficult to understand where they can get in. So in preparation for this new Horizon programme, the Research Office designed new supports specifically to address the barriers to participating in the collaborative programmes, which was where we saw that we had a gap and where we understood there was significant appetite amongst the research community in Trinity. So I'm going to shortly introduce you to Aisling Robinson that you can see on screen. Aisling is a newly appointed interdisciplinary, a research funding expert in interdisciplinary health research. And Aisling is going to talk you through some of the very practical steps that you can take to accessing a consortium if you're interested in joining a bid as a partner. And she's also going to describe the new structured supports that we have made available to researchers who are interested in coordinating a bid. And we're hoping that between these, we're going to enable researchers who are previously interested in Horizon Europe, but maybe put off by the complexity, the very long and very dense Word documents, sometimes up to 500 pages with very dense call text. And indeed, the very long proposal templates, which you may have heard have gone down from 75 pages in the collaborative programs down to 45 pages. So before I hand over to Emma first and then to Aisling, I was just going to give a quick word on articulating the impact of research, particularly for Horizon applications, since impact is the focus of the forum today. So as Sarah previously mentioned, we really have to be very cognizant of the different audiences, and particularly in writing research applications, there is so little space for evaluators so little freedom for them to mark excellent research if it doesn't also tick all of the other boxes required by the particular funding template. So Emma, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide, I'll just show you, this is the overall structure of Horizon Europe. Emma will talk a little bit more about it before. It's the aforementioned complex structure. So if you see over on the left-hand side in Pillar 1 in Excellent Science, just as an example, the two of the kind of flagship schemes in Horizon have always been the ERC and the Marie Curie. And just to give an example of how differently impact is articulated, or how different types of impact expected in these programs. In the ERC, the impact of the research funded is on the research field itself, or on the practice of your peer researchers. Where by contrast, in a Marie Curie proposal, the impact will mainly be on the researcher's career or on their skills development. That's at the individual level. And at the program level, the impact is on researcher mobility across the research area. So in the research office, we've organized ourselves so that we have specialists who are aligned with the different funding, not just the different funders, but also the different funding calls, so that we have that sort of in-depth knowledge about what is required to be successful in a specific program. So we would suggest, if any of you are interested in applying to any of these programs, that you would look out on our website and on our Eventbrite page for the workshops that we run in advance of every major call, which will go into the writing workshops that go into detail about how and where in the specific proposal template, how you will articulate how the research impact of your call is going to meet the requirements, or sorry, if your proposal is going to meet the requirements of that call. So today we decided that because of, again, the interest in the faculty, that we would focus on Pillar 2, so on the collaborative interdisciplinary funding opportunities. I'm going to hand over in a moment to my colleague, Dr. Emma Siddle, who will talk you through those. And after Emma has spoken, we're going to hand over to Aisling, who will talk to you about supports. And then finally, the three of us, in addition to our colleague, Patricia Doherty, are going to stay online for questions. Dr. Patricia Doherty, for any of you who don't know, is the research funding specialist for cancer research in Trinity and in St. James's. So I'll hand over to Emma now.
Thanks, Fiona. Okay, so just to reiterate, this whole image you can see here on the screen is delineating Horizon Europe into the 3 pillars. So Excellent Science being Pillar 1, Innovation Europe with the EIC, the European Innovation Council, being Pillar 3, and then Pillar 2 is what we're going to focus on today. But just to be clear that all of these pillars, first of all, have dedicated supports in our offices, but also there is opportunities for health science researchers in all of these pillars. So there's a multitude of opportunities at different career stages and different research interest areas. But today, as Fiona already said, we're going to focus on Pillar 2. And as you can see in this image, this pillar is divided up into things called clusters. So there are 6 clusters focused on different research areas, and they publish what they call a work program, which is this long text, long document that dictates which top-down calls they want to fund in a given year, in a given deadline. And then consortia are expected to come together from across Europe, both academics, and hospitals, SMEs, NGOs, patient groups, coming together in a collaborative way to answer the research question being proposed by the Commission. So again, within this Pillar 2, within these 6 clusters, there'll be opportunities for health researchers across all 6 clusters. But today I want to focus on Cluster 1, which is health. Okay, and yeah, so move on to the next slide. So in this Cluster 1, you can see that we have, if you look into the work program in the contents page, you will see it's broken up into destinations. There are 6 destinations within this health work program. And I think it's important to be mindful of the fact that these funding opportunities are impact focused, which means that these topics are funded to set out to achieve specific impacts. And these impacts are driven by policy documentation at the EU level. So, the EC have dedicated 95 billion between now and 2027 to achieve the meeting of certain societal challenges through research and innovation. And that's what's driving the creation of these work programs. It's driving the creation of the individual topics that you want to answer. And you need to be mindful of that as you're developing your research proposals. No one proposal is expected to deal with the impact alone. And the Commission adopted a thing called a portfolio approach, which means that a multitude of projects under the same destination or the same topic will work together to achieve that impact. So I think it's that's a distinction that's being made in Horizon Europe from Horizon 2020 that you need to be mindful of as you're developing your proposals. So I just want to kind of give you an idea of how do you develop this project scope and define the scope of the project. If you found a particular topic that interests you, these topic descriptors are normally about a page, page and a half. How do you go about writing to that topic in a way that meets the impact? Well, the first thing to do is be mindful of what policy documentation at the EU level was needed and kind of drawn upon to create the health cluster work programme. So if you read the introduction to that work programme document, you will see various different policy documents mentioned, such as the EU Strategic Framework on Health and Safety at Work, the European Environment and Health Processes, as well as Europe's Beating Cancer Plan and the UN SDGs. So these are all feeding into the development of the work programme, this PDF. And then you go down and you look at the destinations. So that, as I said already, the 6 destinations. Within each of these destinations, there are things called expected impacts. So these are the impacts that all the projects together funded under that destination over the lifetime of the work programme. So the work programmes are published in 2-year cycles. So we're dealing with 21-22 at the moment. All the topics funded underneath that 21-22 destination are expected to meet this impact. So when you write your proposal under this destination, you must show how what you're going to do, the results you will create within your project, will feed back up into that expected impact. Then you get down to your topic level. This is the specific topic, has a specific code and a deadline. You are writing to this. It will specify normally between 3 and 5 expected outcomes. These expected outcomes are to be delivered during the lifetime or just after the lifetime of the project. So they're kind of medium term. And your project results must show how you will feed back up into these expected outcomes. Okay, so this is how you design your project. So when you think about it, don't just think about, yes, I can see that it's talking about a particular aspect of research I'm interested in. You need to think about, what am I going to produce within my project that's going to feed into these outcomes and ultimately feed into these expected impacts. And again, be mindful of the fact that it's not just about producing results, it's about telling your audience about what you've made, what you've created. So that's where this pathways to impact piece comes in. And this is familiar terminology for many, but within Horizon Europe, this is novel in comparison to Horizon 2020. There's a really big focus on pathways to impact. So again, we're going in the opposite direction here. We've defined the scope of the project from policy down to results. When we talk about pathways to impact, we're going from results back up to policy. So what have you created as a result? Who are you telling about it to create that expected outcome? And then ultimately the expected impact to feed back up to achieving societal challenges as identified in these EU policy documents. And key here is this idea of dissemination, exploitation, and communication. There's a really, really big focus of that within Horizon Europe. So just to bring this down to a tangible level, I just want to give you an example. So at Destination 1 in the health cluster, one of the expected impacts, only one of them, is that citizens adopt healthier lifestyle and behaviours, making healthier choices and maintain a longer, healthier, independent, active life, reducing a disease burden, including old ages and vulnerable life stages. So no one project is expected to do all of that. You might have a project that deals with one aspect of that around people who are older, or who are people who are of particular vulnerable life stages. So again, you're telling the story of, I'm creating these results, and by telling this target audience, we're going to feed into achieving that expected impact. And then one of the topics specifically underneath this destination, which probably feeds back into this expected impact, is boosting mental health in Europe in times of change. And it's an expected impact of this particular topic is that the scientific community, together with public authorities, anticipate new and emerging risks to mental health associated with a transforming Europe, contributing to a better, inclusive mental health preparedness. So again, you need to create the story of linkage, and really focusing upon your target audience is key on this. So I'm going to hand over to Aisling Robinson now, but just to say, please don't be daunted by this, because as Aisling will illustrate to you, we have a multitude of supports available in our office and kind of lots of hand-holding and workshops that we'll be very excited to run with you guys. So I'll hand over to Aisling now, and thanks for your attention.
Just going to share my screen here. Okay, so firstly, thanks, Hannah. So firstly, I just wanted to detail ways that you can keep up to date with funding opportunities within Horizon Europe. And the first, if you haven't already done so, is to subscribe to our weekly funding newsletter, Research Focus. And in this, you'll find new and upcoming funding opportunities and events such as call-specific events and also brokerage events across all funders, including Horizon Europe. And we also advertise training provided by the RDO within this newsletter, such as the Horizon Europe Coordinator training, which we carried out last week. And I also wanted to take the opportunity here just to highlight one such event. It's a Horizon Europe Health Calls information event that's taking place this Thursday, organised by the Irish Health NCPs. So Trinity also subscribes to Research Professional, an online database of funding opportunities. So you can create an individual account using your Trinity email and then create tailored keyword searches and alerts to email you relevant funding opportunities. A further suggestion would be to sign up for the Horizon Europe Cluster 1 Health newsletter that's managed by the Health NCPs. And then lastly, is to ensure that your research profiles are kept up to date, such as RSS, when they include so you have your research interests, your projects, and your publications. So we actively access these profiles and we work through the Horizon Europe work program and map these calls to relevant researchers. And then we follow up if we think there's a particular call that might be of interest to a particular researcher. And these profiles may also be searched by potential collaborators. So please ensure to opt or to maximize this opportunity. And in order to submit a collaborative proposal to Horizon Europe, you need to have a consortium. And you can choose to lead or coordinate a proposal, or you can partner and assist with leading a work package, for example. And the time that's needed for each varies quite a bit. So please do get in contact with us if you want to discuss this further. If you're not in a position to coordinate and wish to partner, here are ways that researchers have accessed consortia in the past. And the most common of these is through profile building. So emailing your networks and those of your colleagues, if you're aware that they are involved in a proposal that you think could be able to provide to. So let them know your expertise you can provide and let them know the work packages that you could lead. When you attend conferences, either virtually or in person, always ensure to include a final slide detailing what call topics you're interested in and the expertise you can provide. And attend brokerage events. So at these, consortiums pitch their ideas and detailed expertise that they require to join their consortium. But you can also present at these brokerage events and detail the expertise that you wish to offer to the consortium. And there was a health brokerage event that was held last October, and registration is still open for researchers to add profiles, allowing consortia to reach out. And other options to access consortia that have not been as successful but only require a minimum input include setting up profiles within partner searches, such as CrowdHelix, and we can provide guidance on how to create these profiles if you need it. Funded networks such as cost actions, coordinated support actions, and doctoral networks. Searching through previously EU-funded research projects via the Cordis website can also identify potential collaborators. And lastly, speaking to the national contact points. So researchers who wish to coordinate a Horizon Europe proposal are eligible to apply for funding from Enterprise Ireland. And this funding aims to enhance participation in European programs. So the award is worth up to 12,500, and the deadline is 10 weeks prior to the call close date. But to benefit fully from this award, we strongly recommend applying as soon as you know you're going to be coordinating. Eligible costs include hiring of a research assistant to help with the proposal writing, to searching through relevant EU policy, as well as the associate admin, or teaching buyout if appropriate in your school. So to begin the process, you need to have your call topic identified and your draft concept note. Then you need to contact us and we'll work through to ensure that your idea fits with the topic. You then need to contact the national contact points and let them know your plans. But they may also be able to advise and clarify aspects of the call that can help make your application more competitive. And then you complete the online application and submit. The RDO offers new structured supports for Horizon Europe coordinators of the collaborative proposals. And these are enhanced supports in comparison to those that were provided previously to Horizon 2020 submissions, and aim to increase the success rates of these proposals. So the first, as I mentioned, we monitor the funding programs and we alert researchers to call topics we think might be of interest. And we provide guidance on the application process. When you identify a topic, we will work with you to analyze the call text and look at how your initial concept matches the call scope, the expected outcomes, and the expected impacts. We run logical framework analysis workshops to help you refine your concept and make sure you're addressing all aspects in a structured way. And we will work with you to identify the various team roles within the consortium that will contribute to writing the proposal. We will help you prepare and submit the EI application for the Coordinator Support Grant. As you begin, we can work with you on stakeholder mapping exercises to explore how you can build the right consortium. And we'll also run impact canvas workshops to help you develop a clear plan for how your results will have the expected impacts to the right dissemination, communication, and exploitation activities and to the right stakeholders. And then as you get down to writing, we offer close ongoing support for coordinators, including regular meetings, sprint writing workshops to help write particular sections such as gender and open science. We provide budget templates and support in drafting a budget in line with the program's eligible costs. And we offer regular in-depth proposal reviews of sections and full drafts, as well as the proposal comes together, as well as general ongoing guidance on all aspects of the application process. So these structured supports are aimed to ease the process of building your consortium, preparing your application, and hopefully assisting with a successful outcome from Horizon Europe. And we are here to help, and we've lots of experience in supporting researchers to successfully obtain research funding from Horizon Europe. So please do get in touch. And I've included just a few useful links here. And I think that's all I have.
Great. Again, thank you. A brilliant team effort as well. So much impressed. Thank you all. I suppose like one question I know comes to mind is that you know, the Horizon Europe grants have a kind of a reputation of being a lot of work in maintaining and providing documentation and reporting on them and so on. Is that a barrier? Do you think is that a misperception, or is there help available for that, or is that maybe not the case?
Well, I think it's a real barrier. FSD does all of the financial reporting, so that's fantastic. But then there's all the scientific reporting and all of the deliverables that have to be submitted to the Commission and then accepted by the Commission. But the good news is that project manager is an eligible cost. So if you're coordinating, and that wouldn't be the case again with all funders or all programs. So if you're coordinating one of these large bids and the budget is, you know, €1 million maybe for the consortium as a starting point, it would be expected and it would be strongly advised that you would cost in a full-time project manager who would have responsibility then for all of the project deliverables.
Yeah. Super. And so, yeah, so it's not entirely, you know, a misperception, but help is available. That's good to know. And actually there's a related question in on that from a participant. Can you comment on getting the help of external funding consultants? From my own experience, they can really make a difference, but their services can be expensive and the EI funding doesn't fully cover them. Any advice on that?
I can answer that, Fiona.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Emma.
Yeah, just to say, yes, I think we've some great relationships with some consultants, and they can be costed in using the EI money. Most consultants have now kind of fixed their rate to be what the EI grant will cover, which is 4,000 plus VAT for a suite of review and support. And we work closely and well with many of the consultants who provide that. But it's kind of, I would say it's two sides of the same coin in terms of the support our office is providing and that of the external consultants.
So it's like paying for grinds, basically.
Exactly, cramming.
There is another model that some people in the audience may have come across, where an external consultancy actually offers to coordinate the proposal. And there are different fee structures that some of these companies present. In some cases, they may look for an upfront fee, and in some cases, they may look for a success fee or a combination of those. So we have seen those before. We don't have a policy to rule for or against them. It's absolutely up to the PI and the head of school if they were willing to go ahead with a model like that, and then pay for those services which are outside of the costs of what the EI grant can cover, from the eventual overhead that would come to the school in the event of success. But again, we've experience of the different types of model that these companies can propose. So if you are, if an approach like that is made to you, you can come and speak to us and we'll help you work through it. One other thing that I forgot to mention is very recently, within the last 6 weeks, a post has been funded called a mobilization officer. And their role is to assist the successful awardees from the point that they receive notification of an award through to the point of their project kickoff meeting. So they are now a central point of contact. They're based in TRNI, a central point of contact to assist the researcher with the grant agreement process, through the research account setup process, through the hiring of project staff, and then through to that initial kickoff meeting. So as some of the panelists have previously mentioned, there are a lot of supports in Trinity, but they are quite dispersed. And I think this is the first time that we've had a role that is dedicated to providing a central point of contact and knowing who are all of the key people in all of those diverse offices, and being able to really lead, especially a first-time PI or a PI with a very extensive program of research already, who's very busy, through each of those steps to get them through to the point where their full-time funded staff, such as a project manager, is in place.
Great, and I assume, no, go ahead, yeah.
Probably I can just throw in here,
Yes.
because I think it's in a certain way one step forward towards a post-award support. It will obviously not cover a full post-award, but it's a first step towards a post-award. And as Fiona was mentioned, the larger projects allow also to budget for project managers, which will cover then most of the activities. If I can probably reiterate, I find it's obviously here the group focused on Pillar 2, but there's obviously also Pillar 1 available, where Trinity generally does usually very well, or where Ireland generally does well at CDRC grants. There will be obviously also support through the research office, so TRNI, and we also from the university point, I think it will be also important from us to support, in particular, young researchers that are competing in these grants to find a career development in Trinity, or to provide co-funding for these for salaries, for instance. So we will actively work with applicants also in Pillar 1. It is obviously, I think when I looked at the grant, Pillar 2 is an interesting pillar in the New Horizon Europe program, simply because it actually extended their significant funding in Pillar 2. And so it's actually important to highlight this Pillar 2. For some reason, it might be, and I'm not so absolutely informed in this area, it is my understanding that Pillar 2 also includes EU missions, which are quite important nowadays. And I think the EU commissioned, I think, 1.89 billion euros for 5 missions. And one of the missions, as far as I understand, is cancer. And I think this program is located in Pillar 2. And I think it could actually provide a significant funding opportunity for the faculty, considering the strength in the area of cancer. I think one particular program is to establish infrastructures around cancer and improve the lives of, I think, 3 billion people across Europe. So I think probably there might be one opportunity the health faculty could engage with CRDO.
Yep, definitely. As you say, it's been identified as a strength and a priority for, I think, every school and the faculty. Wolfgang, while you're there, maybe you could just take this question. and it's that EU PhD training networks, or Fiona or her team can either, they don't cover PhD fees, which are high in Trinity, while approximately €300 in other countries. Some Irish universities waive PhD postgraduate fees, as the grants are considered prestigious. TCD does not. Any suggestions to help with this problem?
Yeah, I could probably roll in a certain way. We centrally support PhD students throughout different funding programs. And we would look into what we can provide for these. Centrally, we provide, where fees are not provided, co-funding for PhD studentships.
I would just reiterate that that's a real priority, Wolfgang. We had two people considering coordinating a doctoral network this year who withdrew because the barrier represented by not having adequate funding couldn't be overcome.
You see, in the CRTs and the SFI programs, we support these actively through central college facilities. So I believe strategically we have to support these areas as well. So
maybe again, it's a question of tying those pieces together so everyone knows about it. I wish we could continue this a little bit longer, but we are running down the clock now at this stage. So I want to thank everybody involved. We will put all of the slides, we will send them the slides and the links to all of the participants. But I especially want to thank Fiona, Aisling, Emma, Patricia, obviously for their presentation, Niamh as well, Sarah, Bridget, Giovanna, and Maria and Wolfgang as well for attending today. We much appreciated, and really thank you for your participation. I especially want to thank Lena Doherty and the faculty for organizing it. And we'd like some feedback from participants. If this is a good format for Faculty Forum to have something sort of focused and brief, let us know. And if you have any other ideas for topics that you would like us to work on, we'd be very happy to look at that and oblige where possible. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for those fantastic contributions. I think it's been a really worthwhile and interesting and learning time. And I hope we can continue this in the future, and I hope it's helped some people. So thank you all again, and have a very good rest of day. Take care.